So I wanted to ask you about your next book with Aftershock. It's your first book with Aftershock.
My first
right?
book, yeah. My first creator-owned.
Your first creator-owned book. So we have it here.
Yeah, we do.
The first issue of I'll let you hold it up.
Okay, cool.
Volition.
Is that what was it?
Yeah.
Ah. Oh, my baby. It's a little darker, and it didn't look this dark when I printed it. That was good. Look at this art. Look at this stuff. It's so good.
So
Omar Francia. He's very good.
I gotta say, I love his name. He has a great name.
He does have a great name.
So how did that come to be? How did Volition come to happen?
So like I said, my first book was with Kyle at DC, and the editor on that book was Mike Martz. And so Mike was very like appreciative that I came in and helped Kyle at the end there. And so we just stayed friends for like a few years, and he kind of went around to Marvel and DC, and we just sort of like, he was a good guy. So I started to build up a little bit of my own comic book work, and eventually I knew Lee Kramer, who runs Aftershock. He's a friend of a friend. I used to live with he's best friends with my old roommate, and so we met, and he's like, hey, I'm thinking about starting my own comic company. I was like, what? And then he's like, no, it'll be a thing. And I'm like, okay. And I didn't really believe him for like a long time. And then all of a sudden, like, boom, it kind of exploded out of nowhere. And I was like, oh my gosh, like this is Lee's Lee's baby. And so we sat down and talked, and I'd done enough work, and he was like, hey, if you ever have an idea, let me know. And so I was sort of sitting around and thinking about some comic book ideas, and I was like, well, I always wanted to do something. I was tired of every artificial intelligence robot story. It's always about the robots that they're doing one of two things. Either it's about them waking up or about them destroying humanity. That seems to be 99% of the stories.
Yeah.
And I'm just like, that's not. But
there's
like,
more to that.
There's more there. Like for instance, like if you use it as an analogy or sort of a metaphor in some ways, is like it's about a group of people that are sort of enslaved, and then eventually they get they break free. They break free. Well, we have a very specific example of that happening in this country, and it didn't end the way that all the movies say it ended. Right? They just became part of this. Is like they all blended together, and it became part of a new society. Right? So I was like, that would be really interesting if that's what's happened with the robots. Like they don't run us over, they don't take us over, they don't wake up and they just want to like kill humanity. They just like, hey, they just want it. They're just like us. They want their own things, they want their own life, they want their own, they want to live and have a family and have a good time. And so I was like, that would be really fun to see what kind of world would that be. And comic books are so great for world building because you have no budget, so you can spend the time and you can use the inner monologue and captions to sort of really expand it all out. So so I pitched the idea to them, and they were like, yeah, let's try it. And it took a long time to get out of the gate because Omar Farsi is a fantastic artist, but he's got an engineering background as well, so he likes to build a lot of stuff in the computers and then sort of draw around him and flesh it out. And he has so many great questions about. I could show you emails of just him asking questions about like, what do the robots wear? Is there gender in this world? Why does a robot have a certain gender and not another? Like, what did they have? Did they have one gender? Or do they have 50 genders? Like, what's all that? Do they have genders at all? Like all these crazy questions that he literally would just like send me long email lines, and I'd be like, I don't know, man. I don't know any of these answers. But then I started answering them.
And then you made the story go.
Exactly. And that started propelling the story.
I love it.
And it started evolving. And so that was what that process was sort of like learning and watching him. So it took a really long time to get the process done. But I mean, if you've seen his art, it's worth it because he takes so much time and there's just like so many great details per square inch. It's been difficult because like I wrote like the first 3 or 4 issues 3 years ago.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. And because Omar's taken some of his time to do it, like, for instance, I wrote the first 3 issues of Volition before I ever wrote 1 issue of Go-Go Power Rangers.
Wow.
Yeah. So there's like structural stuff that I was like, well, I don't know if Volition's ever going to actually come out. So I'm going to steal that and put that in Go-Go, and now it's coming out. I'm like, oh, dang. Now it looks like I got a thing. So like so I've gone back and I'm rewriting and sort of retooling the story. And like I've also grown a lot as a writer. I certainly hope I've grown in 3 years. So I'm learning like, oh, wait, there's a better way to do that. Like the biggest problem I have with Volition is that it was just moving too slowly for 4 issues. Like I'm rewriting issue 4 right now from the very, like, it's a completely different story now from 1 to 20, just because I realized I was treading water. I think a lot of early writers tend to tread their water a little bit early, and you just got to you'll come up with better ideas. Always pull it forward. Always pull it forward. But yeah, it's been super fun, and I'm learning, and it's also it's hard to find that balance of character and plot. Like how much, like that's the thing about Go-Go that I've realized is like there's not a lot of plot in each issue.
It's a
very character driven. But that's what I think people like about it.
No, definitely.
They
get that high school drama more so than the people in superheroes and like the thing is coming to destroy the world. There's that aspect too, but it's more about the character and who they are and what they're going through as opposed to the monster and the it's way more in touch with humanity. Yeah. Well, it was funny. Like somebody, I think it was my I keep saying fiance because we just got married, so it's wife. Sorry, I'm so sorry. But like she said something. We were watching. It was like we were flipping through TV, and Gangs of New York came on. And it's the scene where, it was right in the middle, it was the scene where Leonardo DiCaprio wakes up in bed and Bill's sitting on that chair draped in the American flag, and he's just telling him the story about how he lost his eye. And I just remember watching that scene, and we got done with it, and like we watched a little bit more of the movie, and I was like, all right, the rest of the movie is, that movie's okay, it's not perfect, but like I remember thinking like, the reason I watched that movie is the scene with Bill sitting in that chair talking about it. That's the rest of the plot is an excuse to let Daniel Day-Lewis drape himself in an American flag and talk about his failures. Yeah. And I was like, oh my God, that's kind of what almost all movies are in a weird way. It's a plot is an excuse to reveal character. It's true. And like, we get so caught up in plot twists because in turns, and I'm just like, oh, it was that Go-Go's got me to realize that, like, oh my gosh, I'm literally just putting characters in these situations so I can show who
they are. But I've got to figure out who they are, and I've got to make sure I give that, like, slow down the story enough so that you find the time to know who they are. You know what I mean?
Absolutely.
So that's what it's changed Volition, because I was writing just to plot. It was all plot. And then I was like, oh my gosh, I don't know anything about these characters. So that's what it's been, this refining process of sort of going back and realizing, slow down. The characters are why we read the stories. Anything, sequential art, any TV show, like. I can't. If you ask me the plot of Breaking Bad, I probably couldn't tell you the beat for beat plot. Yeah. But I can tell you all about the character.
Of course.
Yeah, and I think that it's like that thing where like I think sometimes we don't know what we like. We just know we like it. Does that make sense?
Of course.
Yeah, and I'm still learning that. I mean, it's always a process.
Yeah, and I think for me, I think I come from a place of like emotion when I'm reading something, and like I want to see that emotional change within a character.
Oh yeah.
And I think like the plot is a device used to get that emotional change to happen.
Absolutely, 100%. Yes.
And I think that's like. In comic books, it's a little bit tougher because
you're on a treadmill a little bit.
You're on a treadmill, and you have to kind of like leave it at the status quo at the end, kind of, for most things.
Most of the time.
If you're talking about like, okay, so we go like, there's these characters and we know they're going to stay these characters. We're not going to kill off everybody and we're not going to change the status quo. Then we have to make a change happen, but it's a small change where everything can go back to normal.
Right. Yeah. It's. I think you can feel it from the fans, because I'm a fan too. So like, I know, like, I remember, like, I was reading Spider-Man for a really long time, and I loved the stories about him and Mary Jane being married. I really liked that, because I remember it, but what I realized is, like, the reason when he was in his 20s, the version where he's, like, in his 20s, and they just got married or whatever, and I remember thinking, like, I really liked this story, but I realized it was because I was in my 20s, and I could really identify with him as a character, but I realized that's not, like, ironically enough, that's not the truest sense of the character. The character should probably be the kid that he is in the movies and in like Ultimate Spider-Man and stuff like that, like that young character. Like, I think as older fans, we want the characters to grow and change with us.
Of course.
And yet, so we get a little possessive of them, or like we're like, no, just we want change. Like we don't want them to stay the same. We don't want them to stay on that treadmill of story, but that's kind of what they should be. Like, I think it's why we all love, like, Old Man Logan stories. There's, like, stuff where, like, or Dark Knight Returns. Like, we love that story where, like, it jumps forward and you see the end of their story, because it shows how they change from when you read 1,000 stories of them staying in the same spot all the time. But they should stay in the spot all the time, because you don't own them. Like, yes, you're a fan,
but it's not yours.
It's not yours. And I think if to evolve them and change them too far from what they were at their core, is taking them away from younger fans. Is taking them away from other people. The comic books are not Breaking Bad. They shouldn't be. Breaking Bad is about one character evolving over time.
Of course.
These are designed to be characters who go on who stay in the same spot and learn sometimes the same lessons over and over and over again, but hopefully
in a new way.
In a new way.